Brian Shaw has released his annual video on the strongest man on earth, and he's casted some doubt, and this could be the last year of one of strongman's major competitions after he said this.
But at this point, I don't know exactly what the next step is going to be. It's one of those things where Carrie and I both love the event. We're very passionate about the event, and hopefully you guys can see that in every single area with this contest. But without more support, potentially the sponsors getting on board that can help us make this a reality, I don't know what the future holds, and that's just at this point the honest truth.
Now, before we dive into exactly what he said and my thoughts on it, I just want to be very forward that I think this would be a terrible thing for the sport if this wasn't able to continue, and we should all do everything we can to support and give some exposure. At the moment in the landscape of strongman, we've got the Rogue Invitational, which is a marketing event for Rogue that they could any year decide they don't want to do. We've got the Arnold, where strongman is bolstered by the massive expo that's run, and we have World's Strongest Man, which is a title that means a huge amount, changes people's lives, but most strongmen can't make a living off of that competition alone. Most go back to work. So we do need more competitions, more prize money, more opportunities, and this is one of the huge opportunities that if it goes away, the sport definitely takes a step back. Now let's roll the footage and see what Brian has to say.
The prize money, and as you guys know and have heard in the past, very much with...
So he starts talking about the prize money. Big shout out to Brian for being transparent about the prize money and transparent about the results of the show. He says the sponsorships were down, which I noticed this year that Trifecta wasn't given the exposure. I don't know if they gave food, but they weren't given the exposure, didn't pay for the exposure from before. I also noticed Celsius wasn't there, which would have been a major sponsor for the event. My experience at the expo is that foot traffic was down a bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. It seemed like there might have been less booths than before, which I really don't understand because this is one of the most successful events that we do all year. It really is in terms of Lift Heavy Be Kind merch, link in description. We've got the Shaw Classic, and then we have the Arnold, less than that. The Shaw Classic, the fans are so ready to support the brands that are there. So I don't understand how a brand could go in the next year not want to come back, but there was a drop off. Now, he also says in-person attendance was down and live stream was down. And I think both of these are partially because myself, Thor, and Reno Nell all weren't able to do the show for different reasons. But still, I don't think that turns around in a colossal way. And I did notice that foot traffic was down a little bit, so less people came out. Who knows why? The show is really cool. There was a lot of new elements added this year. And the only thing I could think of is maybe the arm wrestling and the grip and the powerlifting, all the other stuff. Maybe people got a little bit muddled in the messaging or something. I don't know. I think it's a great event. And when you talk about pure strongman, the strongest man on earth is the competition that historically has exemplified that the most. Now, with all of those being down and that being where the prize money comes from, of course, prize money for the athletes is going to be down. Brian says that last year we were at 260,000, a little bit over that. And that made it the highest paying show in strongman, which was a really cool thing at the time. If you added up all 16 athletes and how much prize money was given out, that was more even than the Rogue Invitational. I walked away with $100,000 when I won the show last year. And one of the things at the strongest man on earth, every person gets paid really well. Now this year that dropped significantly. Brian actually had to put his own money in to get this to 180,000. On a percentage basis, this is a little bit more than a 30% drop while taking a loss. That makes things really difficult. And if we look at the top three prize money that Brian put out there, we've got Evan, who took home 68,400, Lucas, who took home 30,600, and Tom Evans, who took home 19,800. Now that's really good money, and it's such a privilege to be able to lift weights for money like that. But the reality is, at these numbers, it makes it the fourth highest paying show for the top guys. Now, if I'm looking at the calendar, I look at Rogue, which is the highest paying show to win. I look at World's Strongest Man, which is third highest paying, and the best title, and one where you're gonna get the most support and most sponsors off the back. I look at the Arnold, which is the second highest paying, and Strongest Man on Earth trailing just a little bit behind that. Almost the same as the Arnold, not that far off, but it takes a massive toll on the body. Brian wants to make this the biggest, hardest, heaviest competition of the year, and he also wants to make it compensated for that. Now, he mentions this in a podcast that him and I did last year, and we'll get into that in a second, but it's a very difficult decision. When our bodies are our business, if the prize money is going to be down and it's an event where sponsors aren't hopping on like you would hope, well, if you don't get the exposure to the sponsors, you don't get the connection to the sponsors, you don't make the money from lifting that incredibly huge weight. If you want a long career, you do have to think, is this a show that I want to do? Now, that's describing a negative spiral that's possible and that I don't think needs to happen. I hope doesn't happen. If any major sponsors are watching this, please reach out to the Shaw Classic people and see if we can't keep this going, because there is significant doubt cast on this. Now, if we continue watching, Brian goes on to talk about it being a relatively small team, and that's totally true. You see Brian doing a lot of the work, and if you show up the day before the event, Brian is literally on the forklifts and moving stuff. Carrie puts in a huge amount of work as well. And it's a natural financial impact. Now, whenever you start a business or run an event, you have to put all the money out and hope that the money comes back in. And when you put all of that time and effort and aggravation into solving these problems to put on an event and you do it for a loss, well, it's hard. Brian is hugely passionate about strongman, more than anyone I've ever known. And putting on this event was a huge giving back mission to the strongman community. And Brian has stated that in the past. But this doesn't mean that a financial loss is something that anybody is going to accept. It's certainly, you certainly do not want to be worse off for putting yourself out than saying, I'm happy making a small amount of money and doing a good thing for the sport. Again, we'll talk about that in a second in a conversation that him and I had last year. Brian continues on to say, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, moving forward, the expenditure the team has to give to make it happen, it's hard to walk away at a loss, and we need bigger sponsors, of course. One of the challenges I think of this event and the sponsorship is with Brian's businesses, Evolution Athletics and Undefined Nutrition. It takes out the ability for a supplement sponsor to come on, where supplement companies do have relatively large budgets and equipment companies can't come on. So I think that is one sort of inbuilt natural challenge, and hopefully Brian experiences a profit from the booth at Evolution and Undefined. They seem super busy the whole time that they are open, at the expo hours are open. So hopefully there's a little bit of blunted loss there. But definitely some categories of sponsors are tied up. Brian goes on to say, at this point, he doesn't know what the next step is going to be. That means we don't know if the event's going to happen or not happen. There's no events announced. There's no arena booked for next year, presumably because there's no dates announced. There's no tickets on sale. And as of now, the Shaw Classic and the Strongest Man on Earth has seen its final year. And I, for one, and I know all of you guys want this to continue. So let's insert a little bit of optimism here. Now, on the Shaw Strength podcast, we were talking about Strongest Man on Earth because in 2022, he announced 2023 dates immediately when the contest closed. He might have even done it on the last day of the contest, which is a great way to promote the event because there's never going to be more eyes on the event than in the moment. In 2023, he didn't announce the 2024 dates until a few days after, and it might have been a week after, but it certainly was a bit of a delay. And I asked him about that, and I said that it seems like half of you thinks I don't want to do this shit again. And he said, you're right. We continue on to talk to say last year he didn't book the arena straight away. Some of my thoughts on that, and my intuition was true. He said that it was a time for him and his family to step back, see if this was worthwhile, basically assess if this is something that they want to do moving forward. Of course, it's a huge amount of stress to be able to run an event like this. I asked the question to Brian, in 5 years' time, what % chance is there that Strongest Man on Earth is still a contest? And Brian said, I think it is a high likelihood. This was the year a shift had to be made in assessing it. So we do have a level of optimism. And I think the intention is absolutely still the same. And really, the cards will fall where they may. Nobody expects someone to run a contest at a loss. Nobody expects Strongman to be a charity. But the only way that this contest is going to happen is if you guys get behind it, if sponsors get behind it, if we can make it a real profit. I think this has to be something that we put our brains towards, put our efforts towards, put our dollars towards, and say this is an important thing for the sport. If it goes away, that leaves us with 3 major contests. And it leaves the sport in a pretty vulnerable place. Now, it's a hard time economically, and I think whatever show makes it on the back end is going to experience significant benefits, but we really don't know. Regardless of if the show continues or not, Brian has done some incredible things for Strongman in running the show and keeping the show going, and given out some of the largest prize money in the history of the show after only a few years of having the contest run. He's had some of the coolest bits of equipment that we'll ever see, from the chest press with the barrels to the car leg press, now the safe yokes with over 1,200 pounds. Absolutely incredible. I think pushing the limits of what people thought the sport could be and truly testing who was the strongest man on earth. And I think he set out a lot of goals that he accomplished too. I don't want to speak for him, but certainly testing who is the strongest man truly. No real medley speed-based events, medley heavy, medley strength-based events, always taking priority. So if this is the last year at the Strongest Man on Earth, there are 3 ever men to be crowned the strongest on Earth. That is Brian Shaw, Mitchell Hooper, and Evan Singleton. Hopefully, we add a lot more names to that list in years to come, because I think this show could be iconic. I think it could be huge, but it certainly can't be huge without our support. So go ahead, voice your support down in the comments. Give a thank you to Brian in the comments as well, because regardless of where this goes, he put his neck out on the line in a massive way to try to push the sport forward. And whether it continues or not, I really believe that he did. I think he opened our eyes to a lot of what we can do, a lot of what promoters can do for us, from giving food to giving good prize money from top to bottom. I think a lot of important things that need to continue and need to be looked at by other events and promoters as well. So with that being said, let me know your thoughts on the Strongest Man on Earth down below. I know it's the favorite contest of so many fans. So the crowd who goes is extremely, extremely passionate. And I know you guys would love it to continue. So leave your thoughts in the comments. As always, guys, lift heavy, be kind. Thank you very much for watching the video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll catch you tomorrow.